Welcome to the White Sox Recap Podcast. I am Ryan McGuffey. SoxFest 2026 has come to an end, and there was a buzz in the air at the Ramova Theater, and I actually think there was some legitimacy to it. I'm going to get into that and more. We're going to hear from a boatload of guys here that we had a chance to catch up with at SoxFest over the weekend. On Sunday, Chris Getz put a bow on the whole thing by making another trade. This one, I think this was a very high reward, low risk type move, really no risk type move for the White Sox when they acquired Jordan Hicks and David Sandlin from the Red Sox in a package. There's a couple players to be named, but let's talk about what the White Sox got in Hicks. Hicks was sent to Boston last year in the Devers trade and was used primarily as a reliever in the 2025 season for the Red Sox. He can be stretched out. He talked to the media on Sunday afternoon about how he had just hit 99.5 in a bullpen session and feels pretty good. While his role is yet to be determined, the White Sox did receive $8 million because he's owed $25 million over the next 2 seasons. This trade might have been about what they're getting in David Sandlin, who Chris Getz believes is a mid-rotation type arm that he will come to spring and compete for a spot. So this is another depth move for the Chicago White Sox, and it might not just be a depth move. This might be something where you're hearing David Sandlin and his name for quite some time in the White Sox rotation. So Chris Getz, who was on our podcast, as you guys know, last week and said, we're not done yet. We're talking to clubs. It's very apparent that they're talking to clubs because deals are still getting done as we've turned the calendar into February and spring training and pitchers and catchers report next week, if you can believe that or not. So let's get to SoxFest. And we had an opportunity to catch up with some of the, let's call them the elder statesmen and Davis Martin, and some of the younger guys as well, and new faces like Anthony Kay. Let's start with Davis Martin, who after the Luis Robert trade becomes the oldest player on the roster and the guy who's been here the longest in terms of experience. When I say oldest player on the roster, by the way, he's not the oldest player, but he's had the most years with the White Sox, longest tenure with the White Sox. And myself and Scott Merkin got a chance to catch up with Davis as he talked about the Luis Robert trade and when he found out, oh yeah, I am that guy. Let's hear from him. You talked about the void that he'll leave, but the influx of talent we saw last year, all the position players and young guys and still the ones that are knocking on the door, it has been kind of a turning of the page, so to speak. And you, whether you're the elder statesman or not, there's plenty of talent when you look around this team.
Absolutely. I think there's plenty of talent. I think we have the culture set up to where that talent can go in and thrive. They don't have to prove themselves to the locker room, to anybody. All of us have their backs and they have our backs, and I think it allows them to go out and play and have fun. That's the end of the day. Like, that's all we want to do is we want to win. We want to compete together, and we want to support each other when we do that. And, you know, if I don't get the job done, the offense picks me up. If the offense is struggling, I'll pick them up, and vice versa. And I think that's kind of what we felt the last second half, is the trust that we could have in each other on the field and off the field is pretty incredible.
The leadership stuff that you just were talking about, that you want to give back, the stuff that you were learning last year in your starts, you didn't have to do anything in the offseason, but I know the story that Merck did with you about having the guys at the ranch and stuff. Like, how that's a different level of leadership that you didn't have to do, but you did. What kind of support and culture does that you're taking that baton from the season and carrying it through in the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, I think it was really natural. Like, I don't think it was like we are trying to force this, out to the media. And it's like, no, like, I wanted to hang out with my friends, so I texted them, and they're like, all right, we'll be there. Just like anybody else that wants to hang out with their friends. And and that just kind of shows, like, the media, the Chicago fans, like, that's who we are. That's what we want to do and how we are as a group. We've had our starter group message firing off for the past 4 months, all off season, even if we weren't together. So, yeah, when we were always talking to each other, asking how each other are doing, calling each other, and just checking in. And it's a very natural thing. It doesn't feel forced. I think that's kind of why I feel like the culture is in a good spot.
What Sean Burke was saying when I talked to him that he used to see guys like Ohtani and Yamamoto and be like, man, we'd like to have someone like that. But now you do.
Yeah.
What do you know about Murakami, and what's it going to mean to have his presence and give you guys kind of international attention now that he's here? Because he is probably the biggest name they've had from that area.
Yeah. No, it's really cool, and I tell everybody everybody. I think we signed him, and 3 days later, I had someone from Japan send me my baseball card. So it's like it was almost immediate, you know. And you know, I think you look at the guy, you look at his highlights in the 2023 WBC, you look at what he can do for a lineup, and as a starting pitcher, you're drooling because you're like, this guy can change the game at any swing at any time, and to stick that in the lineup in between Teel, in between Mydroth, in between Colson, Sosa, like it's kind of hard not to get a little fired up to watch it. And so yeah, we're really excited. And I know Vargas Yamamoto texted him talking about how Mune is as a person, and so I think he's going to fit right in, and it's going to be a lot of fun getting to know him and talk to him a lot.
Always love talking to Davis Martin. Just really good, insightful, just a good dude, kind of a dude's dude. But the Murakami buzz and the excitement, and everybody I talked to in that room. Now, obviously, Mooney Murakami was not at SoxFest over the weekend due to a visa issue, but every single one of them said, when we got him, I immediately went, I better check this guy out. Or I'm aware of him from the WBC last time around. And Anthony Kay is a guy, new pitcher for the Chicago White Sox, one of those reclamation projects that the White Sox have been so good at developing over the last couple of years. And you'll hear him mention Eric Fetty's name in this chat where I got a chance to go one-on-one with the White Sox new starting rotation member, Anthony Kay. I think this guy is going to be a really good soundbite. And if he can perform at a high level, he also talks about Mooney Murakami because he faced him in Japan. So here's my chat with new White Sox pitcher, Anthony Kay. All right, Anthony Kay here on the White Sox Recap Podcast. And, just you coming to the Chicago White Sox, it's a unique situation, not only for you and where you've been overseas, but just the team itself and kind of where they are in their rebuild. What about the White Sox was attractive to you? Because I know you had opportunities elsewhere to come back to the States and play in the big leagues. So
I think, kind of the success that they had with Fetty a couple of years ago, coming back over from, he came from Korea.
Yep.
Obviously they've had success with him and, how things worked out. And then, you just see all the young potential that these guys have. You see that, they're on the rise and they're headed in the right direction. It's definitely going to be an exciting, fun team to watch.
What about pitching overseas worked for you that you feel now is the right time to acclimate and come back to the big leagues?
Yeah, I think, kind of had a couple of years to kind of find myself as a pitcher again and kind of, just reevaluate, what I need to do to, get myself better and find a way to get back to the big leagues. And I think, the biggest thing that I added was a sinker that really helped me over there. And I think, that really changed everything for me.
You mentioned Fetty. The White Sox historically have done a great, you look at Adrian Hauser last year too. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a reclamation overseas project. They've done a really good job. And I can give you names that probably are before you were born even, because the White, for whatever reason, and they have such a great pitching lab now, and Bannister and everybody that's involved. So when you look about coming into this rotation and full of young arms and just there's some high velo that's coming too in the minor leagues, is that attractive to from a veteran? Like, you're a veteran, but you're also kind of like, it's almost like you're a rookie again.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
Yeah, for sure. I had a Zoom call with all those pitching guys early on in the off season, and it definitely made me want to come here, and it definitely seemed like they knew what they wanted me to do, and they had a good plan for me and all that. So I think just talking with those guys early on made me happy to be here.
I mean, you're a New York guy, so pitching in the cold is not something that you're not accustomed to. I mean, it's going to be that way in April and May, but that obviously can be something that benefits you. But how would you define success this year for you?
For me personally, I think it's just me just going out there, being healthy, and making all my starts. Obviously, we want to have some team success, and we want to get wins for sure. But I think for me personally, coming back and being back on that 5-day rotation, I think for me, I want to stay healthy, and I want to be able to make all 30 plus starts, however many it may be. Just go out there, get the ball, and go as far as I can every time.
Obviously, this team's coming off a 19-game improvement from a year ago. There was really nowhere to go but up.
But you just talked about the talent and stuff that this team had introduced at the big league level last year, but they were 15-36 in one-run games, and Chris Getz and company just went out and signed Sir Anthony Dominguez to lock down that back end. How comforting as a starting pitcher is it for you to know when you go to the ballpark for your start that the back end of your bullpen has somebody that's secure?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to go out there, you want to, pitch as long as you can, but, when it's your time to give up the ball, you want to, have a lot of trust in those guys. And I think, with the kind of success that, someone like Sir Anthony Dominguez has had, you feel comfortable, handing the ball off to someone like him.
Last one for you. Is there one player that jumped off the page to you from just watching from afar? Because obviously you're still, when you're over there, you're still dialed into the major leagues. Is there one player that, whether it's high ceiling, a lot of home runs, you can make a lot of cases. Like Chase is a grindy dirt ball player.
Yeah, no, I mean, Colson obviously a lot of potential. He had a great year last year, and then Murakami faced him so much over the last 2 years. I think the power for him is off the charts, and he's going to be a fun player to watch.
Actually, I'm going to add one more question now with the Murakami. I mean, what does an intriguing sign by the White Sox that I talked to Chris the other day. We had him on the podcast. He wasn't in the he was on the radar, but he wasn't realistic until his market started to dwindle. Were you involved in that process in terms of information? And what can Murakami, even though people are worried about contact and position, the power's raw.
Yeah, no, I had no help in that. Obviously, I'm really happy we had him. He did pretty well against me in Japan, so glad he's on my team now. But I'm honestly surprised that he was able to sign for what he did. I thought he was a $100+ million kind of player. Just watching him the 2 years in Japan, I think the power's off the charts. He's still super young. I think might strike out a lot, but who doesn't now? Yeah. So it's even if he improves that a little bit, I think there's no reason why he can't go out there, hit 30, 40 home runs. I think it's going to be fun to see him adjust to the big league pitching, and I think there's no reason why he shouldn't succeed.
Well, welcome to Chicago. Sox are happy to have you. I know the fans will be happy to see you this weekend, and look forward to a successful 2026.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So Kay went on to add that not only does he believe that Murakami is a $100 million player and was stunned that the White Sox got him for 2 years, $34 million, he told me off camera that he believes his floor is Kyle Schwarber. And I said, Anthony, I think you mean his ceiling. He said, no, there's no reason that he can't be hitting 40 home runs year in, year out. And you heard him at the back end of the soundbite there in the interview say he's got every reason to be successful. And if you can imagine somebody's floor being Kyle Schwarber, now that's a hell of a compliment. But what if Mooney Murakami were to hit 35 to 40 home runs this season with the White Sox, and what that could do to the entire lineup? And of course, I think it's cool that free agent pitchers are looking around the big leagues saying, Eric Fedde had success with that team and that club, and I want to know more about it. And Anthony Kay had other opportunities, as you heard me tell him, to go elsewhere, but he liked the young talent here with the White Sox and the White Sox history at turning pitchers around. Well, that gets us into Kyle Teel, who I think we just started to see a little bit of what this guy's capable of. From a personality standpoint, White Sox fans are certainly going to love him, and have already shown that after the second half of last season. He's a guy that's going to hit high in the lineup, folks, for years, 2, 3 maybe, and just a really insightful kid that we had the chance to catch up with. And when I talked to him last year, it felt a lot different than talking to him this year. So let's hear my chat with Kyle Teel at SoxFest. Kyle Teel on the White Sox REKAP podcast. I remember talking to you last year here, and there was so much uncertainty about when and if and everything else. And then last year happened, and you guys throughout the year came up at different times. You came up in June, and by the end of the season, we saw, I think, just what is a little bit of the ceiling for you. How much did you learn about just yourself last year with the White Sox?
Yeah, when I got called up, I definitely had to make some adjustments, get acclimated to the big leagues. leagues, and just being there for the time I was. I mean, I feel like I got my feet wet, and I know what to expect going into it this year. I'm just really excited for the year, and getting called up around the same time as other guys, and starting off in one spot and ending in another. We got a really great team camaraderie, and I think it's going to be important to just keep building off of what we finished doing last year. So I feel like the foundation's set. It's just keep the ball rolling and keep playing the game.
Yeah, one of the questions I asked you last year, I was like, look around, look at the talent here, and we were still speculative about what it might look like when it's all here. But then you guys got to have that taste, especially in the second half. I feel like you guys really started to kind of find your spot.
Yeah.
So what's to come, knowing that you guys all had your own individual successes at times and team successes? Forget the win-loss record, but the second half particularly, when you look at the splits and the offense, etc.
Yeah.
It's like, let's go, rip the Band-Aid off.
I mean, we just have so much overall raw talent. Shane Smith is a good example, Colson Montgomery, young guys that are just really, really talented, and they have a high ceiling and a high floor. So it's just going to be excited to see everyone come together. We got some new pieces that I'm excited, like Mune, for example. Big power bat. I'm really looking forward to meeting him and getting to work with him.
When you see the White Sox sign Moon, like how much do you get involved, like looking at video or looking on YouTube for highlights of a guy like that?
Yeah, I was definitely looking on YouTube and looking at some highlight reels. He's a big guy, hits the ball hard. That's a guy you want on your team.
You talked about the pitching staff. You saw what you saw from Shane, but getting a high-end closer like Sir Anthony Dominguez, and for a team that was 15-36 in one-run games last year, and as a catcher, what does that do for the entire staff, knowing that you got a guy with that type of stuff in the back end?
Yeah, it's great. He's a phenomenal pitcher, super talented, and I haven't talked to him yet. I'm really looking forward to building that relationship and building that rapport with him, and it's definitely exciting. Yeah, it's a great addition to the team, and we're so grateful to have him.
So, give me Kyle Teel in 2026. Like, how do you set goals? Do you set individual goals? Do you set number type things? What do you do for something like that?
So I stay away from the number type goals. I think it's important to focus on the process, but I do think it's important to have a target. Like, what direction do I want to go?
Sure.
So after the season ended, I gave myself about 2 weeks to just relax, and then I sat down and thought, what do I want to do? What's my goal for this year? And the big one that I wrote down was I want to be an all-star this year, and that's what I've been working towards. What I've been busting my butt every single day to grind towards, and that's where I want to end up at the end of the year personally.
How much do you there's stories out there that the Boston Red Sox are calling Chris Gentz about trying to reacquire Kyle Teel. Do you pay attention to that type of stuff? And more importantly, what type of pride does that give you, knowing that the team that drafted you is calling Gentz like, hey, maybe we could try to get this guy back?
Overall, I think it's hard not to see it. I mean, it was all over the place. So it's not like I'm blind to it, but I try to just focus on my everyday. What do I got to do to get to my goal? What do I got to do to help the team? And it's like when you think about it, it's pretty funny. It's just
it's unique for sure.
It certainly is, but I didn't put too much thought in towards it. I think it's just being where your feet is, being where your feet are. So that's where I'm at with it.
All right, last one for you. Did you pay attention on the East Coast to what the Bears were doing to this city? Did you get? I'm sure you're not. Are you did you pay attention?
I was paying attention.
Are you a Eagles fan?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
So I'm a Giants fan.
Okay.
And I have been following the Bears. I went to the opening Bears game. This year in Chicago, and I mean, I was following. Are you kidding me? I was rooting for them all the way. It was unbelievable what they were doing. Some of those late game plays, some of those overtime wins, just unbelievable.
And you see what this city is starving for. That could be you guys.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of fight in the city. A lot of fight in the city, and that's what you love to see. The fans, the players, we all got it. So
Kyle, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, you got it.
Good to see you, man.
Pretty lofty goal. And that's what I love, when guys are not afraid to say, I want to be an all-star in 2026. Kyle Teel on the record saying, I want to be an all-star in 2026. And I've been putting the work in. He took a 2-week breather and got right into hitting and training. And the guy's been going at it ever since. So I think you want to talk about the sky's the limit. And I love when we had the conversation and talked about the Red Sox trying to reacquire him and him saying, there's no way you can't hear it. It's a unique situation where the team who had just drafted and traded you is trying to trade for you back. Now, Getz had this much interest. That's a 0 for those of you who are listening. 0 interest in retrading Kyle Teel back to the Boston Red Sox. So if you could imagine Kyle Teel being an all-star in 2026. By the way, I don't think that that's all that far-fetched. I mean, a year ago, you would have been saying Shane Smith, all-star? Yeah. Someone's got to go to the all-star game for the White Sox. Why not Kyle Teel? I think he's going to be an all-star with the White Sox in the coming years. And that leads us finally to Grant Taylor. You heard last week Chris Getz here on the podcast compare Grant Taylor to Mason Miller. And I even in the moment go, whoa. And Chris is like, I do. I feel comfortable saying that. So when I saw Grant Taylor at SoxFest, I said, I got to go talk to that guy and tell him about the comp that his GM gave him. Here's our conversation. All right, Grant Taylor here on the White Sox Recap Podcast. And Grant, what a year for you last year. Just the big jump from Double-A to the big leagues with an influx of talent and the excitement here with this roster. Yeah, I know they had 60 wins, but if you look at the second half of what this team was doing together, there's just a lot of excitement, a different type of excitement going into 26 and 25.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I feel like once we got all our young pieces together, we kind of gelled a little bit. We were able to do something pretty fun, pretty exciting in the second half. I'm excited to see how that plays in 26.
You had a unique just journey to the big leagues, making that huge jump. Some success, some bumpy times, and that's to be expected in a rookie year. But what did you learn about yourself as a major leaguer in 2025?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot of what makes me successful in the big leagues, and what might not make me have so much success. But I think it's exciting for this year because I kind of learned where to steer the ship. Everything's one pitch at a time. I'm never out of a situation. All it takes is one really executed pitch, and I'm back in. So
we had Getz in the studio the other day, and he specifically was talking about you, and he said, I really believe, this was unprompted, he said, I really believe he could be a Mason Miller type. He goes, I was like, wow, it's a big comp. He goes, and I really believe it. I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it. When you hear your GM give you a Mason Miller, I don't know if comp is fair, but when that name comes out when he's talking about you, what does that do for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's always great to hear someone in our front office has a lot of confidence in me. Mason Miller's an amazing player, and he's an all-star. So if I can do that on this team, help to be in the back end of the bullpen and close out games and be an all-star reliever, I think it's great for me personally, but it's also great for the team.
He did say, look, I don't want to talk about whether Grant's future is going to be long-term as a starter, because for now he is going to be a reliever. How do you prepare? Do you prepare just, I'm a reliever for this team right now and we'll put the other stuff on the back burner? How do you, if you're trying to be a starter long-term, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I'm a starter. I mean, I'm a reliever now. That's all I can really worry about. Maybe I'm a starter in 2027, but that's a problem for the 2027 off season. This whole off season has been geared towards, the role they expect me to be in this year. So it's honestly, very similar. It's the same job, just different lengths. One of them 6 innings, one of them's 1 inning. So just really honing in on my stuff, honing in on my pitch mixes, and making sure they're as sharp as they can be when it comes to spring.
Did you have like an aha moment last year, or like a welcome to the big leagues moment where you were like, whoa, this is real?
I think my debut, I got the first out, and all that was kind of a blur. And then I got back on the rubber for the second hitter, and it was kind of like, oh wow, I'm actually here. This is pretty cool.
The Sir Anthony Dominguez signing, what does that do to get a veteran type bullpen presence in the back end for a group that's young and trying to find themselves? What does that do for you guys down in the bullpen?
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. I think it'll be great for all of us. I think it'll be great for last year in the games it was me and Leisure had a combined year and a half of service time. So it's going to be great for us to bounce ideas off him, talk to him, learn from him. Hopefully he can learn from stuff from him too, or from us too. But it kind of feels like we're going to learn more from him.
Last one for you. I
I don't know if anyone going into the offseason expected the White Sox to sign Mooney Murakami, but as soon as that happened, did you find yourself going to YouTube or looking for highlights of this guy because of the power? I was talking to Anthony Kay, who's like, that dude crushed me, and I'm really glad that he's on my team. Did you start trying to look up, like, who is this guy? Let me try to...
Yeah, I was reading articles, figuring out who he was, watched all of his, all the press that he did here. Yeah, I'm excited about it. I hear he's the Babe Ruth of Japanese baseball. So, I think it's good. That's not a bad comp. So I'm excited to see, what that looks like.
Last one for you. What does success look like for Grant Taylor in 2026?
I think it's going to be, just trying to put up zeros. Go in, fully committed to every single outing, every single pitch. Full intent, focus. Just making sure I put my best foot forward every day.
Appreciate you joining me. Thanks. What I've learned is these guys, they're young enough to not know any better, and they're just tunnel vision and super confident because of the second half the White Sox had as a unit. If you extract the second half of last year, look at the offensive ranks for the White Sox in Major League Baseball. We know what Colson Montgomery did. And I know Grant Taylor kind of had an up and down, but once he finally settled into the back end of that bullpen, there was a lot to like. And as of right now, and Get said it right here, he's going to be a reliever, and maybe he's a starter down the road, but he's focused on 2026 and what he can do to help the White Sox, especially now that they have somebody in the back end like Sir Anthony Dominguez. And I asked guys, you heard me ask him about what type of confidence does that give a team, whether you're a position player or a pitcher, to have somebody like Sir Anthony Dominguez at the back end of your bullpen. So the buzz is real, folks. The buzz is real for the Chicago White Sox at SoxFest. And I know people are going to be like, well, they lost 102 games and everyone's excited. Last year after SoxFest, it was kind of, and you heard me tell Kyle Teel this, it was like, well, we have a lot of talent in the room. We don't know anything about it. That's not the case anymore. People understand what's going on with the Chicago White Sox. They're making slick moves. They're adding, Murakami fell in their laps. And maybe you don't see a desperate Chris Getz just yet in the front office. I think they're being very calculative on how they build this team. We heard Will Venable over the weekend saying, I'm not going to put wins on this, but this team feels like there's nothing we can't accomplish. So really exciting stuff here after a SoxFest weekend at the Ramova Theater. And this is all brought to you by SinusandSnoringMD.com. If you're a snorer and you're just sick of it, you're like, God, enough's enough. I got to find a place where I can get this under control. SinusandSnoringMD.com is the place to go. They have locations all over, including Kenosha. They have monthly pop-ups in Elgin. It's cold, folks. You dry up. Your sinuses get impacted by that. And then the snoring starts and it doesn't stop. SinusandSnoringMD.com. They can help do that. Thank God they helped the cat man, because that guy was falling asleep in the office, taking his cat naps and snoring like a train. So SinusandSnoringMD.com helped Cap, and they can help you. Check them out if you are trying to end your snoring problem. That puts a bow on this edition of the White Sox Recap Podcast. Really good, insightful interviews there. Happy to bring those to you as always. And look, pitchers and catchers, it's coming, folks. It's coming next week. We're going to have a lot of stuff and a lot of sound and other things to react to here on the podcast. If you don't already subscribe to the recap, what are you doing? Join the nearly 250,000 of you out there that have already done that. If you are a subscriber, but you haven't clicked the notification bell, do that. So every time we drop a White Sox Recap podcast, you get the heads up. Thanks for watching this edition of the White Sox Recap podcast, or listening wherever you get your audio podcast, Apple, Spotify, and otherwise. I'm Ryan McGuffey. We'll be with you next time on the White Sox Recap Podcast.